talks. And it seems that they're still considering getting back to the war. That's why he's getting these sort of briefings. And here is what J.D. Vance said in his recent interview on Ben Shapiro's podcast.
I think what the president has told us to do is use this MOU to sort of refill the world's oil economy, to refill some stocks, and then to see where the hand is.
What is your understanding about, because there are people who are arguing even with MOU. We know that MOU is some sort of roadmap. It's not something, it doesn't bring any sort of commitment on it, on both sides. But the argument is basically what J.D. Vance just said. The United States is preparing, is trying to deal with those economic issues, and right now they're going to get back maybe right after the midterm elections or even before. What is your understanding when you see these sort of reports on Wall Street Journal, the way J.D. Vance, which many people argue he's the guy who tries to negotiate, who tries to find some alternative to Washington, and see they talk this way?
Well, first of all, you need to understand that the United States is agreement incapable. There is no MOU. J.D. Vance just said there is no MOU because the MOU isn't a timeout. Did you read the MOU as a timeout? I didn't read the MOU as a timeout. The MOU is supposed to be a ceasefire that brings about a 60-day period of discussions that brings about a total cessation of hostilities. That's what J.D. Vance just said, is there is no end of war. This is just buying time so that we can refill the oil, and then we're going to go right back to it. So why the hell is Iran negotiating? Okay, the MOU is null and void. Iran should be blowing the crap out of America right now because the war is still on. Annihilate the American bases. Take Israel off the face of the map. If you don't, then you're just playing this game. That means that Iran is playing the game as well. And this is what I've said all along. I said that both sides are playing the game here. Because while the United States is refilling its oil tanks, Iran's recharging its economy and also getting its military back up, rebuilding, et cetera. But Trump did not get briefed on all-out war plan. There is no all-out war plan with Iran. We already did the all-out war plan. We lost. What else can we do? Bomb them again? With what? Weapons we don't have? Invade them with divisions that don't exist? It's not as though we've been flowing, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of troops into the region, stockpiling munitions and fuel and other equipment necessary for a long, extended ground campaign. We don't have that ability. All we have is air ability, and that ability has been, significantly reduced because of the expenditure of munitions we can't replace. So right now, Trump is just buying time until the midterms. That's all this is about. This is about political buying time. He's a liar. He's a charlatan. He's a fraud. He's Donald Trump. Everybody should have known that. The Iranians know that. But if you know that going in, then you adjust accordingly as well. This means that Iran is not just sitting on its hands. Iran is strengthening its military capacity, and Iran is strengthening its economy. The last time I checked, it was Iran that got a whole bunch of oil tankers out of the Persian Gulf into the open sea for going to market. They've sold a lot of oil. They're making a lot of money. They're raising funds. This is the reality. The reality is that at the end of the day, if Iran isn't willing to shut the Strait of Hormuz permanently until they have a actual peace treaty, this is what Iran's going to get, because all Trump is doing is playing stupid games, really stupid, dishonest games. But hey, we're talking about the nation that was negotiating with Iran about resolving the nuclear problem when they attacked not once but twice. So this is just par for the course. The United States can't be trusted, and every nation in the world should be watching this. Russia, you can't make a deal with America because it's not a deal. America will say one thing in debate. The MOU says that we've committed to something else. We haven't committed to anything except recharging the oil tank. That's it.
Yeah. When, in your opinion, let's assume he's considering all-out war. Is that going to bring, I think the only difference they can bring to the battlefield is going to be ground invasion, which is something they haven't done before. They talk about it, about Hark Island. We had Keith Kellogg talking about it. General Keane on Fox News talking about it. And basically their argument is if we can capture Harg Island or some islands in the southern part of Iran, that would be a huge influence, not only on Iranian economy, but also on the Strait of Hormuz. We can basically control this strait. And let's assume his main objective is going to be that. Is that achievable militarily?
No. I mean, we might be able to flood the zone and get some troops in there to temporarily occupy a Harg Island, but then what? We've set up a Dien Bien Phu type situation where we have people in a small little place that's going to get pounded into the dust by Iranian missiles that we can't interdict. We're going to try and push an air envelope over the island. We're going to lose aircraft, and eventually we'll have to withdraw our troops from the island. Plus, I don't think we can take the island. Where are we going to get the troops? How are they going to get there? People haven't thought this thing through. When you deploy tens of thousands of troops, they have to land at an airfield. I think Iran will know what airfield that is almost immediately upon the arrival of the first airplane. That airfield will become inoperable, attacked constantly. Any troops that have been offloaded have to go to a troop assembly point that becomes a target. How do you assemble troops and get them prepared, get the equipment ready to operate when they're being attacked by missiles constantly? Steve Kelly doesn't know what he's talking about. None of them know what they're talking about. This is just stupidity, real stupid. I mean, if they presented this at a command and staff college course, they'd be fired for incompetence. They'd be relieved. They'd be kicked out because it just shows absolute lack of military acumen. Logistics. Where are you going to get the logistics for this ground combat operation they want to wage? We're talking about two Army officers that have no idea what an amphibious operation is, because that's where they're going to drop paratroopers on Harg Island and come in with air assault. Think Grenada. Ask Delta Force in the 160th what it was like to launch a helicopter attack on a lightly defended airfield. They got the shit knocked out of them. We come into Harg Island, we'll lose every single helicopter. Koh Tang Island is, again, 11 helicopters went in, 8 got damaged or shot down, 3 were left heavily damaged. Guys, history speaks for itself. We can go to the 1972 when we tried to do a major air assault into Laos out of South Vietnam. Ask the American helicopter forces that flew in the Vietnamese. We just got shot out of the sky. Go to the Gulf War 2003 when the 101st Airborne tried to send their Apaches into Karbala. Every single Apache came back with battle damage. This is the reality of it. These guys just don't know what they're talking about. I want to remind them Iran won the war because we weren't able to do this. And nothing's changed. It's only gotten worse for us. So, no, there's no all-out war plan. This is a lie being told by the administration to a compliant Wall Street Journal. There was no such briefing, because there can be no such briefing, because it's fiction. There is no all-out war plan because we lack the capacity to wage all-out war against Iran. That's a statement of fact. You're talking to somebody who's actually done a plan to invade Iran in 1985. I know what it takes. And that was Iran that wasn't anywhere near what they are today. So, I can't even say with all due respect to Kellogg and King, because I have no respect for these two men. They're pure propagandists, pure pro-Trump propagandists who are lying to the American people. And in doing so, they're weakening American democracy, because a key aspect of American democracy is for the American citizen to hold his or her elected officials accountable for what they do in their name. In order to do that, we have to be an informed electorate. It's the duty and responsibility of government to be accurate in their description of problems to the American people. The government, after all, works for the American people. It doesn't work the other way around. The American people are not the employees of the U.S. government. The U.S. government works for us, therefore they're accountable to us. They must tell us the truth about what they're doing. And what we have right now is the government lying to the American people, using the media to facilitate this lie so the American people don't ask the right questions. There's a midterm election coming up, and Donald Trump wants the American people as ignorant, stupid, ill-informed as possible so that they don't hold him to account. Because if they do, he'll lose the House, he'll lose the Senate, he'll spend the rest of his term being impeached. Play the J.D. Vance clip where he says that, where he says Donald Trump's going to get impeached. if he loses the midterm elections. Donald Trump's going to lose the midterm elections because he just blew it. There's one, he doesn't understand. See, he's a scam artist. He's a grifter. Recharging the fuel tanks doesn't solve anything. Donnie, baby, the fuel tanks were full when you started this war. And then the Iranians cut off the Strait of Hormuz, and they weren't full anymore. All you're doing is just playing stupid games. If you go to all-out war, you're not going to recapture the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz will be closed, and we're going to go back down to empty. The American people should be smart enough to see this and understand this.
Since the ceasefire been announced between the two sides, we had something like 4 attacks, American attacks on Iranians, and then Iranian responses. What is your assessment of, the Iranian air defense system? Because all of these attacks were far, away from the Iranian borders in the southern part of Iran. They didn't attack the targets from the western part of Iran, which was the case during the war. Then all attacks, 4 attacks, it was basically in the southern part of Iran and in these islands or these close, some regions, some areas like Syria. They're so close to the Persian Gulf and to the Sea of Oman as well. And do you think there is an assessment on the two sides, understanding what's going on with the air defense? Because I don't remember if Iran had the Arash, the Archer. They said they have a new air defense system. In my opinion, is the new integration of the air defense system they already had before. What is your understanding of these new air defense systems that Iran is talking about?
I don't know. I mean, what I would say is, what we saw near the end of the war, that Iran was transitioning from radar controlled air defenses, which the United States, has the capacity to engage with. Our entire suppression of enemy air defense concept is predicated on identifying radars and destroying radars, suppressing radars, jamming radars. And then what we saw with the Iranians and when the United States ran out of standoff weapons is that they shifted over to electro-optical guidance and infrared guidance, different kinds of target acquisition, and the United States started losing aircraft. And that's when we immediately started, saying we need a ceasefire because we had lost the advantage. But those are that's superficial analysis, meaning that I can't tell you what systems were used. I can't tell you, was this improvised or was this, part of a, pre-plan? The Iranians, rightly so, aren't telling anybody about it because why would they? Is it their job to tell you and I how they're organizing their air defense? No, it's a secret. So we'll be left guessing. But I think, you can see by the kind of targets that the United States is striking is that we're not doing deep penetration of Iranian airspace. We're attacking on the periphery, meaning that we're using what's left of our standoff weapons to strike these targets.
What amazes me that, again, you see in the United States, they say these Iranians are unpredictable. J.D. Vance keeps talking this way because from what I've heard so far, from before the war started and during the war, they said they basically did everything they said before and during. Why is it so difficult to understand what would be the reaction on the part of Iranians? Is it some sort of ignorance on their part? They don't want to listen to these guys in Iran, or what is that?
Well, remember, J.D. Vance, first of all, is speaking to the American public, which means he's lying. Again, I'm just saying straight up, the Trump administration doesn't know how to tell the truth to the American public. So what do you want me to do? Assess his lies? Why is he lying? Well, we know why he's lying, because he can't tell the truth, because the truth hurts. The Iranians aren't unpredictable. The Iranians have been the most predictable opponent imaginable. But you have to call them unpredictable because the United States hasn't been able to sustain any sort of predictable outcome here. We're losing. We're getting beat. And rather than to acknowledge that the Iranians are beating us because of our incompetence, we have to, shape the mental battlefield that's, because it's mental warfare being waged against the American people by the American government right now. And basically, we have to say something to the American people that they'll understand. And so American people, we all understand what happens when we wake up in the morning. We have a pattern of life, and we go out and the car doesn't start, It was unpredictable. A mouse ate the electric wiring overnight, and I need a new starter. You see, that disguises the fact that I'm incompetent. That I didn't, weatherproof my car. I didn't, clean my car. I allowed a mouse to nest in my car. No, we have to say it was unpredictable. No, it was predictable. If you leave your car in the garage and you allow mice to nest in your engine, they're going to eat through the wiring, and you're not going to be able to start your car. Anybody who lives in a rural area knows this. J.D. Vance, unfortunately, is falling into the pattern of behavior vis-a-vis the American people that Donald Trump has been in for some time now. Lie, lie, lie. He can't tell the truth. He's incapable of telling the truth.
Yeah. Do you think that we had the MOU between Iran and the United States? Then I don't know what was the reason for the MOU between Lebanon and Israel, because the MOU in Lebanon doesn't bring any sort of commitment, as you've just mentioned about the MOU between the US-Iran MOU. And we have the parliament against it, we have Hezbollah against it, and after all, the war is not between Israel and the government in Lebanon, it's between Israel and Hezbollah. So they're not part of that MOU. Basically, look at all the points, all the clauses in the MOU, it's all about Hezbollah, disarmament of Hezbollah, removing them from the political, or the military aspects of Lebanon, politically making some sort of pressure on them. This is the whole agenda on their part. This is not something new, Scott. You remember during the Biden administration, they basically tried the same thing without having MOU. They did everything. And he's repeating, you see the Trump administration repeating basically each and every step that was taken before by the Biden administration when it comes to the war against Houthis in Yemen, when it comes to Lebanon right now. But you see, they're continuing with the same sort of idea. What is do you think, are they going to achieve something in Lebanon by this sort of attitude?
Yeah, they're going to achieve the defeat of Israel. Yay. Now, let's remind everybody that Israel's been beaten by Hezbollah not once, not twice, but 3 times. I mean, Israel occupied southern Lebanon once before, and they were forced to leave because Hezbollah kicked their ass. That was in 2000. 2006, Israel claimed they were going to wipe Hezbollah off the face of the earth. We had the August 2006 war. Hezbollah survived. They beat Israel. Israel had to sue for peace. And now we have the ongoing conflict where Hezbollah is supposed to disappear, but they're not. They're slaughtering Israeli tanks as we speak. They have drone warfare right now, redefining the nature of the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel. Israel in the United States, we're playing cheap, stupid games. We're acting as if Iran and Hezbollah are children that can be fooled. Because Hezbollah has said, we will continue to resist so long as Israel occupies southern Lebanon. Israel must leave all of Lebanon. So our solution was to broker a fake agreement between Israel and a fake Israeli government, because this President Aoun is a fake. He's a fraud. He's an Israeli agent. Everybody knows it, and now has been exposed as such. And what Aoun said is, oh, no, we authorize Israel to stay in southern Lebanon, so it's no longer an illegitimate occupation. Israel's welcome to be in Lebanon. Really? You think Hezbollah is going to fall for that? You think anybody's going to fall for that one other than stupid Aoun, who is taking Mossad money? And, it's just a stupid game. The bottom line is this ends when Israel leaves Lebanon. That's it. It's the only way it ends. And Iran will never stop supporting Hezbollah. And Hezbollah will never lose to Israel. Israel will always lose. And the United States will always lose because we don't have a plan. When the forces of righteousness stand up against the forces of evil, the forces of righteousness will win. Hezbollah is the righteous side on this fight. And Iran.
Before the fall of Bashar Assad, the problem in the region was Iran and the acts of resistance. Right now, Israelis are talking about 2 fronts. One of them against the Muslim Brotherhood, which is basically what they're thinking of, a combination of Turkey and Qatar. And the other side is the acts of resistance. It seems to me that in Israel, the priority right now is somehow shifting toward Turkey, because they see Turkey and Syria as one of the main problems right now, because they see somehow Syria may be easier than Lebanon, because in Lebanon they have Hezbollah there and they're fighting back. So let's try something in Syria. Do you think that is that the recipe for Washington to stay there forever?
Well, I don't think Washington wants to stay there forever. I mean, if that's the recipe, then they're just setting themselves up for failure. I mean, Donald Trump ran on a campaign that said we're getting out of the Middle East. No more forever wars. So if you're saying now the policy of the United States is to get ourselves in a forever war, the American voters are stupid. We're ignorant. We have short-term memories, but we're not that stupid. We're not that ignorant, and our memories aren't that bad. We know what we heard in the last campaign. We know what the president promised. And we know that what's happening right now is the exact opposite of what he promised, and that this is not a situation that was imposed on him. This is a situation because he opted to do this. This is 100% Donald Trump's fault. So, again, this is just sheer incompetence. I mean, I can't explain, the mental calculations that are necessary to lie on this scale, because normally when you lie, you're trying to achieve something. So the lie is designed to deceive people into believing, something else is happening. Here, the lies are actually leading people straight to that which you should be trying to avoid. I mean, the president shouldn't be trying to, take ownership of a forever war, but that's what's happening here. I'm dumbfounded by what's happening. I think almost everybody who watches the Russians are dumbfounded. Have you seen what Sergei Lavrov has been saying recently and what Vladimir Putin's been insinuating? That Donald Trump's insane. He's not Joe Biden dementia ridden. He's just insane. He's mentally unstable. He's an emotional, train wreck. He's unpredictable, which makes him dangerous. It's not that he has lost the capacity to think. It's that he's lost the capacity to think rationally. He's all over the map. The Russians know exactly what they heard from Donald Trump in Anchorage. They know exactly what they heard because they know what they conceded. And now they're taking a look, realizing the United States never had any intention. Newsflash, the United States never had any intention of making the Anchorage agreement stick. Why? They were just recharging their batteries. Whether it's refilling the oil tank or recharging your batteries, it means the United States is lying to you. The United States is agreement incapable. This is a lesson for the entire world. Hey, NATO, you're getting ready to get together in Ankara to talk about the future. The United States is going to promise you stuff, and it will never deliver because we're not here to be an agreement-capable nation. We only care about us, and us is defined in this narcissistic madman who's assembled a cult of personality in Washington, D.C. and pretends that it's American democracy. I mean, I'm frustrated. So, yeah, you probably picked up on that.
Yeah. Do you buy this concept of having two factions in Washington, one J.D. Vance and the other one Rubio, and they're praying somehow Rubio wants to stay in the fight in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and on the other hand, J.D. Vance wants to somehow find some sort of practical solution for what's going on in favor of the United States, by the way. Is there any sort of that, division when it comes? Rubio said, by the way, the Anchorage is done. I mean, there is nothing, no agreement, between between the United States and Russia when it comes to Anchorage. I would say when J.D. Vance talks about the case of Ukraine, he talks differently. But is the sort of difference between these two guys bringing some sort of, two factions, or you see all of them together as two tools being used by the Trump administration to achieve the same objective?
Again, in a normal political environment, Secretary of States and vice presidents have an agenda. Look, everybody wants the top job. Marco Rubio ran for president. He wanted that job. He's Secretary of State. There was another Secretary of State that really wanted that job too, Hillary Clinton. J.D. Vance wants this job. He wants to be president of the United States. That's why he's vice president. You don't become vice president just to step aside. I mean, the only person that ever did that was Dick Cheney. He I guess didn't want to be president because he knew he was going to be president because George W. was so weak. But the bottom line is you have two men who want the highest office, and they have an election coming up. And so certainly there's going to be posturing against one another. But this this factionalism succeeds only in an environment where, you have, normalcy in terms of governance. A chief executive who understands relationships. I mean, the difference between a secretary of state and a vice president, and then apportions responsibilities accordingly. Donald Trump doesn't operate that. He's a cult of personality. How do you have a faction in a cult of personality? See, the cult of personality precludes factions. The cult of personality doesn't allow factionalism to take place, because the moment you have a faction, you now have a different cult of personality. You have a cult of personality around J.D. Vance. You have a cult of personality around Marco Rubio. The moment either Marco Rubio or J.D. Vance or both say, I'm really important and I matter, is the time when Donald Trump pulls the plug on them. Donald Trump will not brook this. He will not tolerate this. This is the House of Trump, that Trump is the only thing that matters. So there'll be whisper campaigns. You'll have people in the media spinning this way and that way. But in order to have a faction, you have to be given